On the collaborative, it's Superior. And at the moment that we're talking about this, it's Superior, it's Miami, it's Globe, and it's Kearney. And these are we're all connected through this identity of what we call the Copper Corridor, which actually in a whole is about 12 towns, all with a similar background, all mining towns or ex-mining towns. We're situated along the Queen Creek. Most are situated along the Gila River. And we share in this identity together of being people of a similar place. And so we already have reasons to care for what's happening in the other towns, right? Someone in the Copper Corridor has referred to all of our communities as a string of pearls. And I love that image of you just see these nodes of light in these various towns. Well, there's a lot of challenges that we face. It's like Superior, we're doing better than a lot of the other towns economically. And even still, with all that in mind of us doing better, we're still 1.5 times the poverty rate of the state average. We're still half the median income per household for the state average. And the state is, I'm not sure what its standing is nationwide, but I don't think it's super great. So you just imagine that the needs are really high in these communities that we're talking about here. So having that epistemic humility again is part of the picture. So I could say, well, we have the story of place process that we do, and here's a way that we can learn about our place. Well, that's true. Also, like just talking to people, right? You learn a lot from just having conversations. True. Well, and when we say epistemology, that's like ways of knowing. That's all that means. So there's different ways in which we can know a thing, different ways we can come to understand something. And another way to come to understand something is to do a causal loop diagram. This is where you think about the system that you have in mind, and you consider what are all the variables that have some effect on changing how this thing is. And you start listing out these variables, and then you start to see how the variables relate to another. Where are there increases? Where are there decreases? So household income, if that increases, then local spending increases, right? And this is as an example of how these things relate to each other. Part of why we want to do this is because we start to find, when we're doing the systems mapping, we start to find where are there some reinforcing loops? Where can we find some exponential gains? Because if you increase this, that naturally increases these other things, which goes back to increasing the first thing you're trying to increase, and it has this virtuous cycle. And we look for those, and you don't always find those having conversations with people on the streets necessarily. You can, but there's just different ways of trying to approach something. So this causal loop diagram building is a really powerful way, and it's proven enough that all these giant organizations use it. Like you mentioned, Mark Pearson and Carrie Turner, who they're all about relocalizing our neighborhoods, and part of it is like bringing to bear some of the tools and learnings and processes from these large corporations, and seeing how they can be applied in our normal everyday context. And again, we're always having this whole best practice but methods, patterns, processes, these are all things that we can just try and experiment with. Maybe a causal loop diagram isn't going to be contextually appropriate for another group. Well, for our group, we're open-minded enough and interested that we can, and we've done it in Superior, so there's already kind of like a reference experience to how it could be used for a larger group. So those are just some things to keep in mind.